Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to episode 116. Goodness, we are racking them up, aren't we, hon? This is pretty awesome.
Welcome, welcome.
Hey, if you're here in the U.S., you just celebrated Thanksgiving, and I hope that you had a wonderful time. And you know what? Sometimes holidays are tough, and sometimes they're great, and we just hope that yours was great.
Yeah, we hope that you were able to maintain an attitude of gratitude like we talked about last week.
Absolutely. And while you're thinking about what to be grateful for, I hope that you could share that maybe you're grateful for some of the value that we bring you on the show here.
Yeah.
And you could do that by maybe leaving a rating or a review. We just recently got a review that is titled A Must Listen for Blended Families. And this couple said, we wish we would have found this podcast 2 years ago. And we get that. We know how important it is to get some support along the way. And so we really pray that this is valuable for you. And we would love to hear from you through a rating or a review.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's talk about what we want to talk about today.
All right. Well, like I said, last week we shared some thoughts around the power of gratitude, and we encouraged you to maintain that attitude of gratitude, which is going to help you cope with the challenges of blended family life. And that's going to help you to show up well through the holiday season, right?
Yeah, we want to do that.
And now that we've moved beyond Thanksgiving, you're probably keenly aware that Christmas is right around the corner.
Ooh, buddy.
And the reality for many of us in blended families is that any kind of special occasion, whether it's the holidays, a birthday, Mother's Day, anything like that.
What about Father's Day?
Father's Day, too.
Yeah, okay.
These are all times when we are especially susceptible to stress and relational tension. And there are all kinds of reasons why that happens.
There's tons of reasons why, for sure. But we want to encourage you to consider taking some intentional steps now to proactively prepare for your upcoming holiday celebration. And in doing so, you can set your family up for a smoother, calmer, less chaotic holiday this year. That's really the goal.
Absolutely.
So as we were thinking about what we should share heading into this Christmas season, we noticed an episode that we dropped 2 years ago called 8 Practical Tips for a Successful Holiday Season. So we went back, we listened to it, and we thought, you know what? This is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
These people sound like they kind of know what they're talking about a little bit, right? And really several of those tips that we shared 2 years ago focused on how to minimize the challenges that kids and stepkids often experience. And you know what? Sometimes kids might withdraw or they react negatively during these special occasions. Maybe you've noticed that in your kids or stepkids. But we also know that you can get ahead of all that by using some of these tips to create more connection and involvement with the kids. And that helps to also reduce tension.
Yeah. So since that episode has some great strategies around preparing for the holidays, we thought we'd do a little blast from the past replay of it for you today. And even if you listened to it back in 2019, this will be a good reminder around how to prepare yourself and how to set your blended family up for a successful holiday celebration.
That's right. But you know what? If you listen to it back in 2019 and you can name all 8 tips to me right now, you
win
excused.
a prize.
You don't actually have to listen to the episode. You can go about your business.
I'd be amazed.
I would be too, because I don't think I could name them all when we first looked at it. But you know what? We're not going to leave you with just those 8 tips. You're going to want to stick around until the end because we've got a few additional thoughts that we're going to share with you. Okay, well, let's hop right into all that on the other side of the intro. Welcome to the Blended Family Coaching Show, where you'll discover how to move your stepfamily from just surviving to truly thriving.
Grab your headphones and listen in as we share practical, real-life strategies for building healthy bonds,
Understanding the kids' perspective,
romance and partnership,
parenting with great teamwork.
and yes, even co-parenting with a difficult ex.
We're Mike and Kim Anderson, and we believe with the right tools, every step couple can overcome the common challenges of stepfamily life.
Join us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations to discover how you can lead your family with confidence and create the future you really want.
You know, like Kim said in the beginning, the holidays can sometimes be a real mixed bag for blended families. All around us, there's joy and there's fun going on. There's messages of gratitude and, of course, focused family time, right?
Oh, yeah.
But for blended families, that's not always cracking up to be what we want it to be.
Yeah.
So we just want to give you 8 tips that are going to help you in several different ways. And we're just going to dive right in with that
All
this
right,
morning.
let's do it.
All right, so here it comes. Tip number 1. You've got to examine your expectations. Now, the holiday season puts a certain amount of pressure on us. We call it this perfection pressure.
Oh, yeah.
And perfection pressure is not your friend.
Oh, no.
Right? What we
It's
mean by
not.
that is a lot of times we get this idea that we're going to have this awesome, sweet, fun family holiday season.
We're all going to bond
Yeah,
beautifully.
bond. It's all going to work great just because it's the holiday season.
Oh, yeah.
But the truth is that doesn't always change the difficult relationship we have with an ex or the difficult relationships we have between step-parent and stepchild
Or the step-kids.
yeah, just some of those challenging things that are happening doesn't go away just because we're entering into the holiday season. And so we've got to let go of that perfection pressure. And we've got to plan for imperfection.
Definitely.
Right? And that has a lot to do with examining our expectations, especially when we're in those early years. The likelihood of everything going perfect, whether you're in a blended family or a first family, is probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, preparing for imperfection really means preparing for disappointments, and disappointments are tied to our expectations, right?
Definitely.
If we don't expect something to happen, if we don't expect perfection, then we're not going to be disappointed as much, right? And so we've got to prepare for that and handle our disappointments well. And we've actually got a blog all about that called How to Minimize Disappointment in Your Blended Family, because we all experience a lot of disappointment. So we're going to link to that in the show notes, and that might help you with that. But right now, let's just talk a little bit more about examining our expectations. And remember that blending a family is a process, and that process takes time. One step family expert named Ron Deal says that we've got to cook our step family with a crock pot.
Oh, yeah.
That means it's all about low heat over a long period of time.
Takes patience.
It does. It takes a lot of patience. In fact, yesterday over on our Facebook page, we just posted an article from Ron that talks all about the crock pot. And there's some great examples in it, even talking about holiday mishaps and blunders. And so we'll link to that article in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
You might want to go check that out.
Yeah, and one of the things that Ron dives into in that article and that we talk about a lot is when we create a pressure cooker. And that's what we're talking about here around the holidays. We have this tendency to want everything to go just right, that we ramp up with these pressuring messages to the kids and the pressure within ourselves and as a couple. And so he talks about the outcome of a pressure cooker, and it's not good for bonding.
And let's be clear, examining expectations and readjusting expectations doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to lower our expectations. And what I mean by that is that we're not going to say, oh, it's hopeless. We're just not going to have any expectations.
Right.
We're going to still have hope. We're still going to be intentional about the way that we move forward and build bonds
That's
and
what
connections.
we're helping you with today, being intentional.
Right. But we're also going to have our expectations in line, knowing that the first time out, the second time out, maybe even the third, fourth, and fifth time out, that our partner, our kids, our stepkids may not respond exactly the way we want them to respond. But we'll get there over time with intentionality and diligence.
Yeah, we're looking for the long game here, really.
Yeah.
And it's going to take time to get there.
That's right. So tip number 1, examine your expectations. Are they too high right now? Are you kind of succumbing to that perfection pressure? And are you ready to accept that your holiday season is likely not going to be perfect? You've got to keep your expectations in line, handle those disappointments well. And there's this one line we really like from Ron's article. He says, finding what works during the holidays sometimes takes trial and error. That means you might experience some error, right? But pressuring people, like Kim just said, pressuring people toward acceptance only leads to error. So we want to be making sure that we're taking it slow. We've got our expectations in line.
Yep, low and slow.
Yep. So that's tip number 1. What's tip number 2?
Well, tip 2 is to plan ahead with the ex.
Oh, man.
No one likes this one. Now, it could go one of two ways. Maybe you have a really cooperative relationship with your ex and co-parenting goes pretty smoothly through the holidays. Maybe you already have a parenting plan in place that everyone follows and you don't need to do a lot of negotiating. Everyone's on the same page. If that's you, awesome.
Yeah, we're
Celebrate.
Excited. Yeah, no doubt.
But if your co-parenting relationship is a bit contentious, you might need to do some negotiating with your ex. That comes up from time to time. And we've experienced both scenarios in our step-family journey for 10 years. Actually, my ex and I co-parented really well together. We agreed on things. There was give and take. It was generally easy to negotiate the holidays. But then things suddenly shifted. Really, you don't have control over changes that take place.
That's true.
And things became really difficult and contentious between us. And that's a story for another day.
Yeah, we'll talk about that another time.
We don't want to go down that road. But suddenly the holiday negotiations became more difficult, really intense. And it was one of those things that I really didn't want to deal with. I wanted to avoid that. So I would wait till the last minute. And then, of course, it became even worse. When you wait till the last minute, it's not helpful.
Yeah, you're in the middle of wanting to enjoy holiday season and all of a sudden things are blowing up.
Yeah, it's so much better to take care of this up front. So don't avoid or procrastinate negotiations with the ex if it needs to happen. It's time now, before you're in the middle, like Mike said, before you're in the middle of the holidays or right before, it's time now to deal with it. It's not fun. We all know that, but get your planning done early and then you can enjoy the holidays. Once that's out of the way, you can kind of take a breather, relax, all of that. And remember, while you're negotiating with an ex, we want to throw this out here because it's important to remember the golden rule, right? How would you like to be approached and negotiated with?
That's right.
Think about that before you make that call or write that email. Regardless of how your ex responds to you, make sure that you stay patient, respectful, and professional. That's key. Don't let them drag you down to their level. Don't respond to their stuff when you don't need to. In the end, this is going to give your kids a positive model for character and conflict resolution. That's our goal, really. So don't let this drag you into a really ugly place. Keep it professional, courteous, and really be that good example to your kids.
Yeah, that's really good. All right. So tip 1 was examining our expectations. Tip 2 is being proactive and making those plans that we need to with the ex. Don't put it off. That's right. Tip 3, once you have that plan, let the kids know what to expect.
Yeah.
Some kids are going to be really happy and excited. Some might be indifferent about whatever the plan is. But just knowing what to expect actually helps them to feel more secure and stable.
Yeah, they need to know the schedule and where they're going to be and when. As soon as possible, actually, is helpful for a lot of kids, really are planners.
That's right. Now, sometimes when we talk about, okay, we've got to go approach our kids and we've got to tell them the plan, that can be a little bit nerve-wracking because maybe we've got one or we've got more than one child who just doesn't want to engage.
Yeah, they're not too excited.
Yeah, especially around this holiday season. We're wanting to have fun, bonding, sweet,
wonderful experience.
Wonderful time. Yeah. But our kids may not be there. And so that can be really challenging within your own home, right? And so we want to talk over the next 5 tips about what to do when we've got a kid who just isn't engaging. They're not responding quite the way we want. They might be distant or they just aren't having a great time.
Yeah, having a bad attitude about things maybe.
So how do you begin to work with that child and help kind of bring them into the fold as you walk through the season? Yeah. So the next 5 tips are all about how we can do that within our home.
Yeah, and before we launch into those 5 tips, I just want to give us a kid's perspective moment here. Remember that when you divorced or, had that separation, you were able to move on. You've now recoupled and you're excited about your new future, but your kids aren't there. They're stuck in 2 worlds. They really don't get to move on.
Yep.
They still go between the homes and they're living in two different worlds. So their perspective around the holidays is going to be different than yours, and that's okay.
Yep.
It's all right.
Yeah. We just need to have empathy for them and understand
and
that.
realize that this is a hard time for them.
Yeah. And having that empathy, I love what you just said there, hon. That's really helpful, because having that kind of empathy and insight into their perspective is something that's going to help you to shift your focus from what you expect from the kids to what do you want for the kids, regardless of how they behave.
Yeah, that's good. Say that again, honey.
So this whole perfection expectation thing and the blissful little, by the fireside sipping eggnog and singing Christmas carols may not be what you experience. But a lot of times when we're wanting that, that's expecting something from our kids. We're expecting them to engage, to be present, to be happy about it.
To behave.
And that's all about what we want from our kids. And so we can get caught up in that focus. But we need to shift our focus from those things we expect from our kids to what we want for our kids, regardless of how they behave. Yeah. So let's dive into the rest of these tips here.
That's a huge mindset shift right there.
That's right. So tip number 4. And all about this child who's struggling. We've got to ask ourselves, what's one thing that we can do to create a sense of stability and connection for each of the kids over this holiday season? And here's what I mean by that. Maybe one of our kids needs some reassurance from a bio parent. And so we might need to say, okay, sometime over these next couple of weeks, we're going to just get on the schedule 2 times where I'm going to be able to have some one-on-one time with this one child to reassure them and let them know, hey, dad's still here, mom's still here. Everything's going to be fine. I love you. And I'm excited to just get this time with you. That communicates stability and it communicates connection.
Yeah. Sometimes kids feel like they get lost in the shuffle of all of this blended family life. So that one-on-one focused time is just can do amazing things for a kid.
Especially in a time that tends to get really busy. We get so focused on tasks and shopping and
making everything perfect.
Getting a meal on the table and all of those things. Maybe we just need to slow down and say, you know what, let's go spend some time together. So that's one way to look at this. Another way to create stability and connection is if kids are doing okay, maybe family time is okay, but maybe we do it a little bit differently. We have some fun adventure. I know where we live, they have the little Santa train where you ride on a little train and you go and look at like Santa stuff. That kind of activity around this busy holiday season is actually really good because it doesn't create the pressure cooker by us sitting here, in the living room looking at each other and expecting to engage. Form. It's something else we get to focus on, but we get to experience it together as a family. So watch for those times where maybe we just need a little bit of adventure or a really good laugh.
Something light.
Laughing together is so great. Maybe there's a movie coming out that you all want to go and enjoy. There's lots of opportunity to figure out how to do something just a little bit different around the holiday season that's going to create connection and stability for each of the kids. So that's tip number 4. What's that one thing that you're going to do to create a sense of stability and connection?
Yeah. And with this tip, you might need to sit down and identify each child separately and brainstorm.
Yeah.
What do you feel this child needs right now? What can we do to help this child feel a sense of stability and connection? And it might be different for each child, but it's a great thing to do now heading into the holidays, as well as tip number 5, which is speaking your kids' love languages. What are your kids' love languages?
And if you're not aware of what love languages are, really a lot of writing about this by a guy named Gary Chapman. There's multiple books in his series about the 5 love languages, and we highly recommend them.
And the premise behind it is that each kid, and not just kid, adults as well, have an emotional tank. And an emotional tank is a place that fuels all of us through life. And we need our emotional tank filled by people that we love and that love us. And when kids' emotional tanks get filled, that's when they're feeling better about themselves. They're more secure. And by the way, they tend to behave better. Bonus.
Hey, I think that sounds really familiar for me too.
Exactly. We're all like that. when our love languages are spoken to us, and it can be anything from quality time to an act of service, physical touch. There's 5 different love languages. So if you want to learn more about this, it's a great thing to learn. We've posted a blog article in the show notes, all about that. It's called, Are You Speaking the Right Language to Your Step Family? And it's pretty simple. I mean, it can be anything from like what Mike just talked about, spending quality one-on-one time with a child, if that's their love language, to snuggling on the couch. If physical touch is their love language. Doesn't have to be a big, huge thing. It's quite simple. But remember that when a child's emotional tank is filled because you've taken the time to speak their love language, they will go into the holidays less ramped up.
Less ramped up. Okay. They'll go in with a little bit more peace.
They're going to behave better and they're going to feel better.
Yeah, that's really good. So tip number 1, we are examining our expectations. Tip number 2, we're making sure that we're planning ahead with the X.
Oh, yeah.
Tip number 3, once we have that plan, we're letting the kids know what to expect.
With the schedule.
Yep. Tip 4, we're making sure that we're creating a sense of stability and connection with each of our kids. And tip 5 is all about love languages. Now, tip number 6, we want to age appropriately, talk to our kids that, hey, we want you to have a really fun holiday season. So what would that look like for you? We're going to engage them in conversation to try and do a little bit of fact finding, a little bit of investigation to say, hey, what does that look like for you? Now, you may get a response that says, I'll tell you what'll make me happy. You send my step-parent packing, right? Don't get thrown off if they come back with something like that, something that you can't change or aren't willing to change clearly. Then it's okay to say, you know what? I'm really sorry you feel that way. And of course, I'm not going to do that. But what else could we do that could really make this year fun for you?
Yeah. What are your ideas?
And just keep at it, and you may have to let them go for a day and then come back around the next day and say, I want to finish up that conversation. I really want to know what would make this fun for you. But age appropriately, engaging them into this kind of conversation is really drawing them in. And you might consider doing this either individually with a child, or you may just call a family meeting, depending on how everybody's getting along right now.
That might make more sense.
Yeah. I know we're throwing a lot of different resources at you, but we have another one that we recently posted by Ron Deal on our Facebook page. It's all about the benefit of family meetings in a blended family. So we're going to, of course, link to that in the show notes as well. And that may be something that you want to investigate for yourself. Now, this isn't just about, when you have a family meeting or when you try to talk to the kids, this isn't doing what the kids want all the time. Remember, this is a democratic process where we want everyone to be able to contribute, but the parents still have the final decision. Yeah. And you need to make that clear. Like, you're not dictating what we're doing.
You just want to hear their ideas.
I want to hear what your ideas are, and we'll see what we can do. So anyway, you may want to go check out that article.
Yeah, it's so important because when you're making your plans for how you're going to celebrate in your home, when you have these conversations with the kids, you're actually arming yourself with some great information. Yeah. What are the kids' expectations around the holiday celebration? Mm-hmm. What are their desires? What are their concerns? Yeah. When you're armed with that information, then the two of you can sit down and plan what's going to be best for everyone in the family. But don't make assumptions that you know what your kids want.
That's right.
Sometimes we hold on to those old traditions thinking, oh, my kids will be so disappointed if we don't do it this way. And then you get there and the kids are miserable. And it turns out that, well, maybe it wasn't as important as you thought it was.
Yeah.
We've experienced that
along the way. Yeah.
So don't assume you know what your kids want. Mm-hmm. Engage in a dialogue and really be curious. I'm really curious to know what you feel about the holiday. What are your ideas? And engage them.
That's good.
And then when you do sit down to make plans, involve your kids in the plans.
In the actual activities. Yeah.
Let them be a part of them.
And that's tip number 7.
Yep. Tip number 7. I'm moving on. This gives them a sense of purpose and help them by approaching it in a fun way, right? I really need your help with that. I'm just wondering, I'm thinking we're going to do some game time after we eat dinner. What game do you think we should play? Mm-hmm. What do you think? What other activities do you think we should do?
Yep.
Really?
Or the things that are going on around the holiday. I'm putting the lights up outside on the house. I really need your help. Approaching it rather than, hey, come help me put the lights up.
Yeah.
Is, man, I really need your help. I can't do this alone.
Yeah. And even if they give kind of a half-hearted response, getting them involved, helping them to take ownership, it's going to help to build a sense of belonging and purpose in the family.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really great when you've got, especially when you've got people coming over or whatnot, to kind of think ahead and say, okay, we got 5 kids here. What's one thing or 2 things that each of these kids can contribute to this family gathering or preparing for the holidays or whatnot? And then walk through that with them. Hey, I really need your help. Here's what would be great if you could do this.
Yeah. If you've got one kid that loves to decorate, engage them in decorating. If you have one that loves to cook or is interested in cooking, engage them in helping prepare the meal.
That's right. So that's tip 7. Now, the final tip, tip 8, is staying focused on gratitude. Now that sometimes is challenging, and it really, honestly, it relates right back to tip number 1 of keeping our expectations in line. We've got to be realistic about what's coming. And even when things don't go our way, even when we don't have that perfect holiday that we're dreaming of and hoping for,
or we're disappointed,
that we still have a choice to focus on gratitude. What is it that we can be grateful for?
Yeah. There's always something.
That's right. There's always something to be grateful for. And remember here that you're playing the long game. And when we're focusing on gratitude, even for the small things, we're really setting a great example for our kids to say, you know what? I can have joy. I can be thankful even when things aren't perfect.
Yep.
And that's okay.
That's key.
So those are your 8 tips for a successful holiday season in your blended family. We've got number 1, examine our expectations. Number 2, we want to plan ahead with the eggs, right? We're not procrastinating that. Tip number 3, once we've got the plan, we're going to let our kids know about it to help them feel secure and stable. Tip 4, we're going to create that sense of stability and connection with each of our kids based on what they need. 5,
leading in.
Yep. Tip 5, we're going to speak each of the kids' love languages as best we possibly can. 6, we're going to age appropriately. Share, hey, I want to know what you want to do for the
or
holiday
have a
season.
family meeting, whatever works.
Yep. I just lost track. Where are we? That was tip number 6. Tip number 7, involving kids in all the activities. And tip number 8, staying focused on gratitude. And we've got a challenge. We want you to pick just one of those things, something that you're going to do right away. And I mean right away, like today or tomorrow. One of these things. We've given you a brief outline in the show notes. We've just gone over all 8 of our tips. I want you to choose just one of those tips and act now.
We hope that those 8 tips were valuable for you and that you're able to pick one to focus on.
Absolutely.
Because you can do something different, something new. And we're not done yet. We have some more things to share, and these things really have the potential to make things better for your blended family.
Yep.
Now, the first tip in that episode was all about examining your expectations and letting go of perfectionistic ideals, right? And we realize that this can be really hard for most of us to do.
For sure.
So we want to share a few additional ideas that might be helpful for you.
Yeah, our first Christmas after we were married and living under the same roof was really challenging.
Yeah, it was.
I had a lot of ideas in my head and stories in my head around what I thought things were going to be. I had some unrealistic expectations, and what we actually experienced was kind of a big blindside. Right?
Yeah, the big strawberry waffle debacle.
Absolutely. we got a whole lot of unexpected acting out from Annika, tension between you and I around how to deal with her behavior. And of course, I ended up experiencing a lot of disappointment and even disbelief. And the stories in my head, those expectations about what our first Christmas together was supposed to be like, actually tripped me up and kind of kept me a bit stuck. And if we're really honest with ourselves, there's lots of stories that we tend to entertain in our heads at times. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. And what we need to do is try our our best to get our story straight.
Yes.
The reality is that we tell stories to ourselves all the time. Stories about what others think of us or what they want from us and the motives behind their words and their actions.
Yeah.
The problem is we all tell stories from our own perspective.
Yeah.
And we formulate the story for our own benefit. You know, when a stepchild acts out, we often jump to judgment because their behavior triggers disappointment or anger in us. When our partner seems to side with their kids, we make assumptions that they love their kids more than us and that maybe we'll never be a priority for them.
That's right.
The truth is, we naturally tend to stay focused on ourselves in our storytelling.
That's right.
And we push for our own desires and our personal comfort.
Of course.
But if we want to get our story straight, we've got to focus on what blended family life is like for the other members of our family. We need to broaden our perspective and get really curious.
That's right.
Imagine what it must be like for a child to move back and forth between two parents that they love. Consider how challenging it is for your partner to meet your needs and their kids' needs on a daily basis. This is tough.
That's right. Or think about how painful it might be when your partner feels left out of that deep biological connection that you have with your child. You know, as a step-parent, I've felt that whole stranded stranger experience on many special occasions and even just in life. So we want to add another tip number 9 to your successful holiday strategy, and that's to be intentional about getting into your family members' shoes. Get into someone else's shoes in your family. This will help you to understand and empathize with them. And don't believe everything you think. And do your best to keep your stories straight, which means that you might need to challenge and broaden your story and choose to readjust any unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
If you can do this well, it's going to help you to better understand why your family members behave the way that they do, and that's going to keep your expectations of them more realistic. You know, that first Christmas we had, my blind side, my disbelief, it was all fueled by my desire to actually experience the story that was in my head. And I really didn't think a lot about the struggle or the pain that Annika might have been in. I didn't really think a lot about the struggle or the pain that you might have been in.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to fix it all so that we could have a happy Christmas. That's what I wanted. And honestly, that was really self-focused.
Yeah. I wasn't focused much on you either. I think that was the year I told you to butt out.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Yeah. So we've learned a lot about the value of a curiosity mindset towards each other over the years.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you can be mindful of your stories just from this tip, or if you want to learn more about navigating the stories in your head, you might pop back to episode 36. It's called How to Change Your Stories and Grow Connection. And we'll put a link in the show notes for that episode. It's really interesting.
That's right.
And it can change how you show up. Now, finally, we're going to share one more tip for you. Tip number 10, which is this: focus on what you can control.
That's right. You know, the reality is there's a multitude of people and dynamics you cannot control in your blended family.
No.
You can't control the values or lack of values that's modeled to your kids in their other home.
No.
You can't control the behaviors and attitudes of your former spouse. Wouldn't that be awesome if you had like a former spouse remote control? We should invent that.
It's unrealistic. Don't even go there.
You can't control your stepchild's thoughts or attitudes.
Yeah.
You know, really, the list can go on and on.
Oh, yeah.
And when you spend your energy worrying over the things you can't control, you're setting yourself up for disappointment and, honestly, a bit of exhaustion.
Oh, yeah.
It keeps you focused on things that you wish were different, but you have no ability to actually change.
Yeah, you're spinning your wheels.
Yeah, you're stuck. Instead, you need to shift your energy to what you can control, like the values that you'll model in your home, or the attitudes and actions that you're going to take towards your spouse, your kids, and your stepkids, or your response to the challenges that you're facing, even when you're pushed outside your comfort zone and maybe feel a little bit out of control. You do have control around how you're going to respond.
Absolutely. Staying focused on the things you can control will give you influence.
For sure.
Over the long haul, you'll discover that your influence can actually counteract the negative impact of all those things that you just can't control. And when you experience some wins around those areas where you do actually have some control, you'll have more realistic expectations moving forward, as well as some fresh motivation and hope to keep going. Now, we've loaded you up with some helpful resources in the show notes so you can continue learning and go even deeper around some of the things that we've discussed in this episode. So check out the show notes and keep growing and preparing for your blended family holiday, because you can make a difference.
Absolutely. And, you know, the truth is you're going to face some disappointments along the journey, even around these joyous holiday occasions. But if you can pick just one of the tips that we talked about and be willing to put yourself into the shoes of others, to get curious about their perspectives and get your stories straight, as well as focus on what you do have control over and accept that things are going to be imperfect, if you can do all of that, then you're going to have the ability to keep your expectations more realistic, to minimize disappointments, to manage stress better, and experience a lot more joy throughout the holiday.
Yeah, you can do it.
Absolutely. So if you just apply tip 9 and 10 to whatever that other thing you're going to do, that one thing that you're going to choose from that previous episode, you're going to be well on your way to a happy holiday season.
Yeah, it'll pay off.
Or happier holiday season.
Absolutely.
Well, as we kick off December here, we really hope that you are prepared for your upcoming holiday season. And we would love to talk to you a little bit next week about the power of actually complimenting your kids and stepkids. You're not going to want to miss it. And I think it's going to help you make some deposits into them as we head closer and closer to the holiday.
Yep, deposits into the love bank.
Absolutely. It's going to be great. So make sure you meet us right back here next week. Don't miss the Simple Step coming up on Friday. But that is going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.